right, and welcome to another episode of Tea Time with Mother and Crone. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about again, and we have a special guest on tonight. So I'd like to, first of all, Melinda's going to tell us what's in this lovely little stuff we're drinking here today.
Yes, so this is yarrow. One moment here. Okay. Pause. Can you hand me that notebook, please? I left my notes up on the bed. I'm sorry. Okay. I have it all here. And I'm out of printer ink, so I had to write them. Okay. And play. So today we are having yarrow. And it is a bit bitter. It's a little bit sweet, but definitely honey needed for sure. This is one of those ones where I did have to add the honey. Yes, I have one. Yeah. Now this has a lot of medicinal properties, some that I wasn't aware of, but it's really good for healing wounds. And it was actually used in ancient times to help heal wounds. It can go back to ancient Greece, even where it was used in poultices and ointments to help heal wounds. So I thought that was really interesting. It may help fight with inflammation of the skin and liver. So like skin infections, skin aging, it can help with. And also if you have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, it's supposed to help with that as well. So I thought that was interesting. The leaf extracts have anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties. So that's a lot what helps aid the wound healing process. It can also help treat digestive issues such as IBS and ulcers, which I thought was interesting that I wasn't aware of. It may also help reduce symptoms of depression and anxiety. So I thought that was, yeah. And also brain health. It helps with Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and those sort of brain health, those brain diseases. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
And it has a lot of magical properties as well. It's actually known by some as the witch's herb. And there was a woman as early as or as late, I should say, as the 17th century, who was tried as a witch for using this herb. So
Really?
even, yes. If you were, I thought that was really interesting. I know it looks like, I have mine here. It looks like little cut up grass.
Yeah. This is the leaf and the flower.
Yes, and that's what we got on our shopping trip. But yeah, if you were caught using that, you could be tried as a witch just for this alone. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
Yes, it's also good for love and gratitude. You can actually hang bundles to give thanks for life and spiritual health. You can also hang bundles of the dried leaves and flowers over the honeymoon bed to help with a long-lasting and healthy marriage. I thought that was really neat, especially we just finished with Valentine's Day. It's used in rituals for love, courage, and healing, which kind of ties back to the medicinal, the wound healing. So I thought that was an interesting connection. You can also use it to help rid negative energy, which is good. And it sort of makes sense if it's like a witch's herb, and grounding and shielding is so very important. It makes sense that could be a use for it. And it can also aid in divination, which I thought was interesting.
Well,
but
we
again,
just had our psychic teas, just the other week?
Yes, exactly. So I thought that was really interesting. There's a lot of good information on that one, as there always is. So yeah, the honeymoon bed thing is a traditional charm. So I thought that was interesting.
That really is, because I would have guessed something for fertility on a honey, just because,
Right.
But it does have a bit of a straw hay kind of flavor to it. It reminds me of
does.
when we were kids and we were baling hay on the farm, that it like gets in your throat kind of smell because you're around it all day.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what that put me in the mind of when I was first with my first cup. It was like, yeah, that's that taste. It's
Yes.
not
Yeah.
bad with honey. I'll grant you, you need lots of honey. This would probably be good to mix with like a really flavorful tea, like a Earl Grey, or something that has a lot of heavy flavor, dark teas. This would probably
Yeah.
be really good with, because it would take over the flavor. It would, because I'm using a green tea, which is a very light flavor. So my green
Yes.
tea is letting all of that flavor out. So it would probably be much better with Earl Grey or black tea, or like a really heavy morning blend tea, rather than with
Yeah, it does
little green.
earthy. It does, yeah, it does have that earthy taste, but it's not, after adding the honey, it's not bad.
Oh no, I couldn't do it without honey, but there's a lot of them I can't do without honey.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure.
And part of it is because, yeah, I like honey, and part of it is some of them do have, I mean, you have to remember, our taste buds are totally accustomed to the 20th century. I don't care what
Mhm.
anybody says, and you get used to that. So it's just one of those things that it's there and there's nothing you can do about it.
I know, I
So,
know.
but
So
we're
we're continuing to talk about Ostara this week, and Pam has a lot of good information about symbolism. And later, in just a little bit, I'm going to add some things of folklore and talk about the goddesses. But what type of information did you find on the symbolism of Ostara?
It was interesting. The name alone for Easter and Ostara are intertwined. They're from the same root words. In Greek and Italian, this time of year, Easter is called Pascha, and it's because it's taken from the Passover, from the Jewish Passover. But in English-speaking countries and in Germany, Easter takes its name from the pagan goddess from the Anglo-Saxon England, who was described in a book by the 8th century English monk Bede, Bede. He wrote this whole thing about how holidays were celebrated. So it's Esoter, and that's Eostre, was the goddess of spring or renewal. So that's kind of why that kind of fit in with the equinox and Easter. You can see with the two, and the spelling is very close. If you look at them, it's like, oh my goodness, they're almost the same word. But it's interesting with the symbolism. I know as a child, I lived on farms, so yeah, I knew the difference between bunnies and chickens. So I knew that bunnies did not lay eggs, but it was always at Easter, you see the Cadbury Easter bunny laying these Easter eggs, and you're going like, wait a minute, I know that cannot happen.
Right.
So I just thought it was a little like, okay, now let's understand this. And it's funny that bunny in America was actually the hare in Europe. And there is a difference between a bunny and a hare. A hare is much bigger, and it's a little bit more wild. And that's where you get the term March hare, as crazy as a March hare. In March is when the bunnies, who are normally all cuddly and lovey and huggy, they go nuts because the men fight to breed with the females. So in March,
Right.
you actually see rabbits fighting. So it was considered very unique. Now the hares are much, much bigger in Europe. And the hare has always been a symbol very much for witches, for fertility, obviously. I mean, you can't miss that. And so the fact that spring is coming and everything is having babies, and you'll find usually about April timeframe is in America, like about Maryland, midway down in America. That's when the bunny rabbits are actually born. So it all falls together that way. And it's interesting because everybody's like, we get these little bunnies all over the place, but these are just enormous hares over in Europe. So the bunny has always been very much a part of Easter. Now, when Easter was first came along, it was didn't really get a lot of hold until about the 9th or 10th century, when it actually, because it never really in Europe took over the equinox, because everybody still celebrates the equinox. It was celebrated for so long that they kind of just pushed guys together there. So you will see, you know, the rabbits and that one. Now the egg, I thought that was interesting, because eggs have always been a symbol of rebirth, of fertility, because your eggs get
Right.
fertilized, obviously. But
Mhm.
the Easter egg, the egg is a symbol of new life, and Easter eggs are to represent supposedly Jesus' emergence from the tomb and reliving. But Easter eggs, in certain countries, they are like awesome, like the most beautiful things you've ever seen. I mean, come on, for real.
Yeah.
Yeah, we won't tell you what mine looked like. But during the Middle Ages, people began decorating them and eating them as a treat following Mass. So boiling the egg is actually a way to keep it longer. So hard boiling eggs was not uncommon many years ago, because you could keep the egg longer than you can if it's fresh. So that's where you get the eggs from. So the eggs have always been a symbol of life and in the beginning. So eggs kind of make sense. So now those two things, we kind of got senses in there. Now rabbits are always considered lucky, because you carry a lucky rabbit's foot. Wasn't so lucky for that rabbit, but we carry a rabbit's foot. So it's kind of like rabbits are also associated with luck. So it comes right into Easter time and fertility. So some of the other things with pagan, and it's really funny because there's so many symbols and so many traditions. Every country has its own, and every country has a little change on somebody else's. But one
Right.
of the bigger symbols that you don't really think about is the symbol of the lamb. Now, spring lamb in Europe, that's a specialty. The lamb in Europe is usually in March or April, is because in February we sell in bulk. In bulk means in the womb, because the sheep are pregnant. They birth, use birth the lambs in March, April timeframe. So they are birthing end of March, first part of April, so right around Easter time. So, and usually use the young lambs are what you kill to have your rack of lamb for Easter. Now, it said that this was dated back. Now, you got to look at it how it is. You could imagine the lambs are being born and they're getting up and getting around, and then they kill them to eat them. So when Christianity came along,
Right.
they pulled the Lamb of God into that. So that's where you get the Lamb of God from. Um, it's from the lamb that is
Mhm.
actually was sacrificed. It's all about the Passover in the Old Testament, when the outside was covered in blood, and then the angel passed over and didn't kill the firstborn male child. So that's been something that's been around for quite some time. And again, the lamb is very pagan. Now, Easter lilies, I was always curious why that flower was used for Easter.
Mhm.
I mean, they call them Easter lilies, obviously, but why was it lily? And lilies are actually native to Japan, and they were brought to England in the 1700s. And they found their way to the United States in the wake of World War One. So in the early 1900s, they came to the United States. And um, the reason is they bloom that early, and the bulbs are dormant, because you bring the bulbs in or you leave them out in the cold until they go dormant, and then when they supposedly rebirth again, it's a symbol. So
Oh,
Christianity adopted that, but for non-Christians, it's like with the snowdrops, the crocus, the lilies, they're all the first flowers just to start breaking the earth as it starts to warm up. So at the time, now you have to look at the time when this is happening over in Europe,
mhm.
the flowers are just starting to come out. So you have your crocuses. And if you notice on a lot of Easter stuff, you see a crocus. you'll see the little snowdrops or lilies of the valley. All of those flowers are early flowers. So it kind of just goes along with
Right.
rebirth and coming out. So that was kind of cool. Now about the candy, let me tell you, see, I'm going to go with the good one here. I was really interested in Easter candy because it's like, well, how come we come up with all of this wonderful chocolate? I don't want to say who invented chocolate, but yeah, we really
Right.
do that part because I eat the ears. I'm terrible for that. My poor children, they thought all of the Easter bunnies just didn't have ears.
Uh,
Um,
my kids like Cadbury eggs.
there you go. Easter candy. Easter is actually the second best-selling candy holiday in America after Halloween. So think about
Yes.
that for a minute. It's among the most popular, is associated as chocolate, which date back to the early 19th century in Europe. And they did chocolate eggs, and the eggs have always been a symbol of life and rebirth. So another egg-shaped candy, the jelly bean, became associated with Easter in the 1930s. So, and they said that although the jelly bean's origins reportedly date all the way back to a biblical era concoction called a Turkish delight.
Oh,
So
wow.
I did not know that. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. And I only like the
I didn't-
black jelly beans. So
Oh, and those are the only ones I don't like. So when we share a bag of jelly beans, you can well switch.
I take all
You
the
know,
black
that's yeah. Ugh, I can't. So I know I shame my German roots by not liking black licorice, but yeah, I mean that's really interesting. I never thought about jelly beans being the shape of an egg.
I,
So I mean that just never clicked with me, like the association with Easter and like I never thought, gosh, it is the shape of an egg.
it is when you stop and look, and now you're going, well, they are the shape of an egg. I
Yeah.
didn't think about it either, but they're saying that according to the National Confectioners Association, over 16 billion with a B jelly beans are made in the U.S. each year for Easter.
Oh
So
wow.
yeah, and the top selling non-chocolate Easter candy has been Peeps. And
Ah, peeps.
there you go. Yes, that it was, believe it or not, it's a Bethlehem, Pennsylvania based candy manufacturer called Just Born, founded by Russian immigrants. His name was Sam Born in 1923, and they began selling Peeps in the 1950s. The original Peeps were handmade, marshmallow flavored yellow chicks, but other shapes and flavors were later introduced, including chocolate mousse bunnies. I am
Oh
those people who put their Peeps out to let them get hard,
yeah.
but they never quite
I
last.
Yeah, no, they don't. Now, those are good. So they have like the traditional chicks and the bunny rabbits for the peeps. But then they started coming out with like tombstones around Halloween and ghosts. And I saw this thing on Pinterest, the one thing I can actually recreate from Pinterest. So you get hot when you have your hot chocolate and you put one of the ghost peeps in your hot chocolate. And then when he starts to melt, he looks like, has no form, like a ghost, and it's so, and he's like a gloppy white ghost, and you still see the eyes. It's really cute. It's one of those things. That's one of those honoring my inner child things that I will do.
Yes. And I'll tell you, I've never done that before, but that sounds pretty cool. I have to
Because
get that one.
you put marshmallows in your hot chocolate, and a peep is just a giant marshmallow.
This is
So when it melts, yeah. So for those that like marshmallows in the hot chocolate, which I can't have hot chocolate unless it has marshmallows.
we get spoiled like that, don't we?
Mhm.
And the Easter parade now, I don't know about anybody else, but everybody watches the Easter parade. I mean, it's like the Thanksgiving Day parade, it's just one of those things you watch. And that actually dates back to the mid 1800s. I didn't know it was that old.
Oh, wow. I didn't either.
Yeah, it's the upper crust of society would attend to Easter services at various Fifth Avenue churches and then stroll outside afterwards, showing off their new spring outfits because that, was the thing to do. And average citizens started showing up along Fifth Avenue to kind of watch them. And there you go.
That's really
So,
interesting.
yeah, it reached its tradition, the peak by the mid 20th century, and in 1948, the popular film Easter Parade with Judy Garland. I don't know if anybody's watched that. In Your Easter Bonnet was the song, so that was kind of cool. Um,
That is cool.
I really enjoyed that movie, believe it or not. And the tradition lives on in Manhattan with Fifth Avenue from 49th to 57th Street shut down during the day to traffic so people could actually do the little parade thing. It has no religious significance, but let me tell you, it's a fun thing to do or a fun thing to watch. So other cities
Yeah.
also have their own parades. So if you're in a big city, you probably do have an Easter parade. It's kind of a fun thing to do. Like we've said before, when you celebrate, it doesn't matter what you celebrate, as long as you celebrate something. Have some fun.
Exactly.
Easter can be a fun time. A lot of the downloading, like I started doing some downloading and I'm looking at all this going, oh my goodness, you wouldn't believe all the stuff I downloaded. But it is interesting that there is a myth about the origins of what they call the first Easter, and it's a Sumerian legend. And it's a legend, and I know I'm going to massacre these names, so please forgive me. Damzui or Tammuz and his wife Inanna Ishtar. And Ishtar is grief stricken when dies and follows him to the underworld, and naked and bowed low, she is judged, killed, and then they hung on display. In her absence, the earth loses its fertility. Doesn't that sound like Persephone?
Right.
Inanna is missing for 3 days, after which her assistant seeks helps from the other gods. So it's kind of like that myth was discovered on tablets dating back to around 2500 BC.
Oh, wow.
So that is a creation story from way back.
Way
Um,
back.
yeah, and I thought that was really interesting. So I thought that was a great thing. So there's a lot of, different kinds of parallels because when Christianity was coming in and taking over, they were, taking over. So
Right.
you got all that going on. So hot cross buns were something that I was wondering about because hot cross buns, um, we were always told, was very reminiscent of the cross for Jesus and the buns and all that stuff. And come to find out, hot cross buns were the women who were out there doing their thing, making dinner and stuff. This is the time of year where they get a little bit of grain to come in, and they had a little bit of yeast and a little bit of flour left over. So that's about what they did. And that's where you get your hot cross buns. They were just, the women just kept making them. And in Europe, there was some issues because they considered hot cross buns at one time, like many things, being pagan. So they didn't want women doing the hot cross buns because that's when they put the twist on them to put the cross on them with the sugar.
Mm.
So then that way they could have their hot cross buns. I just thought that was interesting because it was like, wow. So now that we know what we're talking about a little bit, it's a lot more fun. I think it's really interesting. If you looked at the Fabergé eggs or the Russian eggs,
Oh,
those
I know.
like, oh,
They are. They are.
I mean, it is really wild. Um, and there is, believe it or not, Easter's date is always changing because it's done by pagan what we call pagan guessing game of the first full moon. And one of the big things about that is that it's constantly changing. So in 325 AD, one of the first major Catholic Church councils, the Council of Nicaea, where you got your Nicene Creed and all that good stuff with Constantine, determined that Easter should fall on the Sunday following the first full moon after the spring equinox. So you have to go back to the spring equinox, see when the first full moon is after that, and then you count
Yep.
the next Sunday. That's why the date moves and why Easter festivities are often referred to as a movable feast. There's a defined period between March 25th and April 25th on which Easter Sunday must fall, and that's determined by the movement of the planets in the sun. So those are the parameters. Everybody asks, how do you tell when Easter's coming? That's the way you do it. So you'd have to go back and try and figure it out. But
Yeah.
that's interesting that that's one of those pagan holidays that kind of became Christian, that kind of became pagan. That is not sure what it is now, but it has DNA from both pagan and Christianity, so everybody can enjoy the holiday. And that's
Yes,
kind of one way of putting it. It's a lot of fun.
exactly. And like we talked about a little bit last week, you can make it your own, like egg hiding is a big, tradition, obviously. Decorating the eggs goes way, way back. And you can there's different offerings for Ostara. There's eggs, of course, mead, spring flowers, lamb, of course, milk and honey, also because of the spring and the coming with the flowers and things like that. But yeah, you can do all sorts of things. And talking about a marriage, so instead of for our immediate family, we started recently doing the egg hiding on Ostara. And like we talked about, I mentioned before last week, a lot of times it'll fall during a weekday and we work. So what we would do is we would do the egg hunting at night, and we would have the kids have glow sticks and flashlights hunting for the eggs. And it's so fun, and they look forward to it because it's something different.
Well, it's hard
But
too, if you're going to go to every family's dinner, if you got your
right.
parents still alive and you're trying to your dinner, mom's dinner, his mom's dinner, and then you got the dads, and it's like, whoa.
Yeah. And so the Easter egg hunts were first popularized in the United States in the spring of 1862, when America was in the middle of its Civil War, in which young men, in the Civil War. And so First Lady Dolly Madison was the first dignitary to host an egg roll on the lawn of the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. during the War of 1812. So I thought that was really interesting.
Dolly was always up for a party, believe it or not. She was a real party animal in the White House.
Right. Yeah. And then in German and Scandinavian lands, the tradition of offering eggs, we mentioned as an offering before, to the goddess in exchange for blessings or wishes was a common spring practice. And then, of course, with the rise of Christianity in Europe, making pagan practices a capital offense, those offerings had to be hidden so the goddess could only find them. And that's where you get the egg hunt from, because it was pagan, so they had to hide the eggs because it represented fertility in the goddess. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. They never quite got over that one.
Right. Yeah. And then I thought this was interesting. The search for eggs also has a deeper metaphysical meaning, in particular in the East. The hunt represents the soul's eternal quest for life renewed, so that it may have the opportunity to perfect itself and reach a union with the deities. I thought that was exactly. And what was really interesting is, and I'll go into it in just a moment, when I was going over the goddesses, and Freya is the goddess of, love and war and fertility as well as death. I thought that was interesting because I sort of had a light bulb moment. The goddess of fertility and death, she represents reincarnation, the cycle of life, rebirth and death. So I thought that was really interesting. And that was like an aha moment I had today. And I was like, oh man. So that was interesting. And then also You can use a broom to sweep hard-boiled eggs from outside your home to the inside to bring in abundance and fertility. And these are just some egg magic things that I found were interesting. Brown eggshells can be added to protective or healing magic for pets or livestock. And you can also use brown eggs and magic to assist in animal husbandry to ease a pet during childbirth. So that's giving birth. So I thought that was interesting. You can bury rotten eggs near a crossroad to cause abundance to be taken away from an enemy, which we don't do, but I thought that was interesting.
I wonder if Hecate likes that one.
Well, that's why I saw it, because I saw crossroads and I was like, oh, interesting, because I immediately think Hecate.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can, of course, well-washed eggshells for talismans of protection. Some people, I know I have a jar. You can dry out the eggshells and use your mortar and pestle and ground them up real fine, and you can add them for protection spells. It's really good for infertility, of course.
Good if you need calcium in your soil for your plants.
Yeah, for your plants, exactly.
Grind those eggshells up real fine and just sprinkle them on the ground.
Exactly. And I thought it was really interesting. So there's also a lot of ways, when you do, going back to the egg decorating, whenever you can go into the store and now they have the little tablet that you stick in vinegar and it colors your eggs, all these different colors. They have tie-dye. They have all sorts of different ones now. But there's a ton of ways that you can dye your eggs naturally with spices and foods. And I thought it was really interesting. So basically you would boil water, and when it comes to a boil, that's when you would add your spices or your food, and then you would remove it from the heat and let it sit for a minimum of 20 minutes, depending on how what shade you want your water to be. And then when it cools, then you put your eggs in there and you add a tablespoon of vinegar, and then you put them in the fridge, and then it sets the color basically. And again, you time it based on what color you want to finish with. And for that, you can use different bowls, but it's easier if you just do like an egg per mason jar, have a different color in mason jar and do it that way. But here are some of the things you can use. You can use turmeric for yellow. You can use the onions for orange. So if you were to do them in orange, blackberries would be a red velvet. Red cabbage would be a robin's egg blue. And beets would be like a blue violet, depending on, again, how long you have them in there. Cayenne makes it a rust color. So I thought that was interesting. And also you can use cabbage, even red onion peels and yellow onion peels will give it a different color as well. So I thought that was really interesting, and I'm gonna try it this year with the kids. But
that beats the little things.
Yeah, and I mean, you're still using the vinegar, and also another fun thing, especially if you have the little ones, you can use whipped cream and food coloring and sort of roll the eggs in a bowl of the whipped cream, and it kind of gives it a light color, like a pastel tie-dye color. You can do it with shaving cream too, but if you're going to be eating the eggs, you can use whipped cream. But yeah, I thought that was really neat.
We used to, the kids used to take years ago the cheap crayons that were wax. Draw something on the egg, and then you put the egg in and dye it. And when you pull it out, wherever the wax is, it doesn't take the color. So you would,
Right.
put your name on it and all sorts of silly little things. That's really cool.
Yeah.
That can be, I mean, if you want to do natural, I mean, the ingredients are pretty easy to find in the grocery store.
Yeah, any grocery store. I mean, it was pretty amazing. And also there's some neat things you can do with eggs for divination, which I thought was interesting, and I wanted to share that as well. So it's called, and I'm not sure if I'll be saying this correctly, so forgive me. Omancy or umancy. It's the practice and the art of divining with eggs that comes from the Greek words oon, for egg, and mantia for divination. It's also known as uskapi, umancia, umantia, uscopia, ovomancy, or ovomancy, which if you think about it,
Ova.
eggs, right. But you can, one of the most popular egg divinations is by separating the whites from the yolk and quickly pouring them into hot water and interpreting the shapes that take form. So it's kind of like tea leaf reading, which I thought was interesting. And then you can also, there's something called divination by daphnomancy, which is burning of bay laurel leaves to predict the future. And I thought that was interesting. You need fresh, not dried leaves, and either a fireproof container like an open fire in a fire pit, or you can do it on a charcoal in a cauldron is fine too. And it's supposed to help you predict the future for divination. And if
I just got my fire pit delivered today. I have to put it together this weekend.
Look at that. I know. And this was so interesting. So you you throw the leaves into the open fire or into the cauldron on your charcoal, and you think of a question while it burns. If the leaves catch fire and crackle as they burn, it means timing is favorable. If the flame smolders or suffocates and dies out, or the leaves suddenly burn silently without crackling, the timing is not favorable. Also, flames rising together is a good sign. If there's only one flame point, it means you're being single-minded or you need to be single-minded. If two flame points are visible, you're going to need the help of a friend. If 3 flame points burn, your outcome will have an amicable conclusion. And I thought that was really interesting. And it said it was good to, do that type of divination with friends and family to see if you get different interpretation, your friend or family would different interpretation than you would.
See, we have something coming up in October, which might be a fun time to do something like that out in a fire pit.
Yeah, it would be fun.
I was just thinking about it. There's a little planning going on for October, and we're having fun with it already. So it's going to be awesome.
I know.
Sure, well, I'm not sure we're going to be able to take anything and put it on air.
Oh, I know. Goodness. Oh, we're crazy.
It gets a little fun at these things, but that would be something cool to do with the group. It really.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought that sounded so neat. And I'm going to go over a few goddesses that we have, and then we'll bring on our guest that we have tonight. So tonight I'm going to be covering some goddesses, and then next week I'll go over some of the gods associated with Ostara. And the most popular goddess of Ostara is Austere or Ostara, which is the Eostre. She's Germanic and the goddess of spring. And of the triple goddess, she's known as the maiden aspect of the triple moon goddess. She represents.
Isn't she the one that everybody has the one picture of? When I was doing all of my research, there's one picture that showed up in every piece of research I did.
I think, yes. Yes.
That's from 1901 by Johannes Geertz. Springfield.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's the picture. Whenever you pull something up with Easter, that's who you get.
Yep. Yeah, I saw that a lot too. And she represents birth and beauty. And that is where the name Easter comes from. She was worshipped by many Germans in the Germanic lands before the Germanic people, before the rise of the church happened. And she rules over fertility. So again, that's where Easter comes from. From what I've researched, Easter is not mentioned anywhere in the Bible, the actual word. So it's derived from the goddess. And I wanted to read, I said last week I was going to share a little interesting story about a Ukrainian folk tale about her. And so in the story of Ostara, the goddess, we are told that one day in the winter she found a poor, helpless, injured bird that was dying. In order to save the bird's life, she turned the bird into a hare. But the change didn't fully take place. While the bird now looked like a hare, it still had the ability to lay eggs. The hare decorated the eggs and then gave to Ostara as gifts for saving her life. But where did this story come from? So the story is actually based on a Ukrainian folk tale that explains the origin of Paisanki. And again, I'm probably mispronouncing that. I apologize. But that means beautifully decorated eggs. And Eric A. Kimmel retold this tale under the title The Bird's Gift. The version including Ostara was first published by Sarah Van Brannock in Mrs. Sharp's Traditions, from where the story spread partially through the internet until it ended up in the children's magazine Cricket under the title The Coming of Ostara. And then it goes on to talk about how Bede mentions Ostara, but he does not associate her with hares. There's also, there's several references. 1835, Grimm and the Dutch mythology postulates Ostara. And there's all sorts of stuff. But I thought that was really interesting about how she turned the bird into a hare to change, just to save its life, but it didn't fully transform. So that's how the hare was able to lay the eggs. I thought that was a really cool.
That's interesting that they explained it like that. And Lithuanian and Ukrainian have those beautiful, and the Russians, those beautiful eggs that they do that are like, oh my goodness, they are absolutely startling.
They are, absolutely. And then the next goddess is Persephone, which is the Greek goddess. She's the daughter of Demeter and Zeus and the wife of Hades. So she's queen of the underworld. Now, she is she represents the cycle. So she goes, underground with her husband Hades in the winter, and then she comes up to be with her mother in the spring, Demeter. And that's when, Demeter is so happy that her daughter is back with her. So she's happy, and that's where all the flowers come from in the spring and the blossoms. And then when she goes back to the underworld to be with her husband, she's sad, and that's why there's winter and cold and darkness. But I thought that was interesting. And then Freya, as I mentioned, she's a Norse goddess, and she represents fertility. So she's used for Ostara also. And I've already mentioned the connection between the death and rebirth. I thought was interesting. She rode a boar, which was her faithful companion. His name was Hildisvini. And then she can also be seen with a golden chariot being pulled by two blue cats, which is a gift from Thor. So I thought that was really interesting. She was a sorceress, and she was a shaman that practiced pre-Christian Norse magic. And in Denmark, Freya is mentioned in the first stanza of their national anthem. So I thought that was interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You don't see
I know
a lot of pagan stuff like that. That's really cool.
That's why I had to mention that one, because I'm like, oh, in the national anthem, that's pretty awesome.
Every time you sing it now, you're hearing paganism. That's pretty
cool. Exactly.
You find it in the weirdest places. You go to churches and you see all of these. If anybody saw Dan Brown's or read his books, he's very big on symbolism. And when you go to the churches, if you go to some of the older churches, especially in Baltimore, you start seeing all of this scroll work and from the Book of Kells. And if you know this, you're looking at it going, oh my God, I didn't realize it was so pagan in the basilica. But the fresco and everything, right? I mean, artwork is very, very pagan. And there was a big Orthodox church that was being built in Baltimore, and we didn't have the right kind of people to build it. They actually had to send to Russia to get people to build the golden domes on the church because no
Oh, wow.
one knew how to do it. So it's kind of cool. I
That's
mean, you know, some of the old buildings still have a lot of paganism in them. And especially the churches that have the stars with the round circle around it. Yeah.
Oh, those old Gothic European churches. Oh, yeah. They're everywhere.
And you go, isn't that a pentacle? No, it's a star with a circle.
Right. Like, okay. Do you know what a pentacle means? A star with it. I know. Okay. Well, tonight we have a special guest, and she's going to talk with us a little bit tonight. And it is my daughter, Hayley, my middle child. She is part of Crystal Cavaliers, which is our children's ministry at the Correllian tradition. She's been going to rituals since she was 6 now. She's just turned 12. So we're going to talk to her a little bit tonight, just briefly. And here she is. Say hello.
Yeah, don't be too nervous. We were talking, we went to Casadega, and Miss Hayley was kind enough to walk all over with us. And she was also kind enough to walk through the labyrinth with me. So we've had a little chance to talk, so she shouldn't be too scared. It's interesting. I raised my children, 2 of them pagan, became pagan, and paganism was known in our household. There was no question, you know, and my children did go to private school. So they, you know, got a choice of what they wanted to do. So when I was raising them many, many years ago, because my children are much older, we really didn't let anybody know that that's what they were studying at home because of the attitudes at the time. So my first question to Hayley is, who knows you're a witch?
Well, my best friend knows, and my other friend.
Okay. Is she afraid of you?
No.
Okay.
She thinks that they'll be on FaceTime, and she's at my altar showing her friend my athame and all my crystals and stuff. Like, her friend is like all over it. She loves it. She's a cool kid.
It's different because, like, my children, somebody found out my daughter was studying. She was about, I guess, in high school, and there was, you know, a little bit of teasing going on, like, oh, there's the big bad witch and things of that nature. To which she made remarks like, you know, keep it up, you're going to be a toad, and all sorts of nasty things. So yeah, you know, you can say things like that. I am going to ask you, I know that you've done rituals because I've seen the videos. Now this is going to be a different question. Do you feel when you do those rituals, do you feel like you're part of a community doing something?
Yes. I've been told by other adults that they think of me as an equal person, but sometimes I still feel like the odd one out because I'm much younger than everyone else. But once, like, after all of it, they just tell me how good I did, and then it makes me feel better.
Well, I can confess to that because I saw you and you did an excellent job in the rituals I've seen you in. Okay, I'm going to ask you, are you considering going on with your witching education?
Yes, because I want to be a clergy. Yeah.
Ooh. Ooh, we're getting excited now. Like that initiation.
Yep, she wants to join the club. She already has her first degree book, so She's already gonna
Wow.
start.
That's
I know.
I have a question. It says, how do you reply to somebody who teases you about being a witch? Do you get angry or do you try to educate them?
Well, I don't get angry, and I don't feel like I educate them as much as I need to, if that makes sense. I try not to like reply that much.
Just kind of
Just
ignore it.
yeah, just kind of ignore it. Hmm.
Okay. Now, if I came up to you and you tell me you're a witch, first question I'm going to ask is, well, what is a witch? Can you tell us?
Um, well, to me, they're very spiritual people and very nature based.
Yep. Nature is a big thing. So I would say that's right.
I love the
Um,
answer, spiritual. That
yeah.
that's deep, girl. You don't know it, but that was a very deep first answer. Um, Most people do not understand. Usually the first question I get is, do you believe in God? And I'm like, which one? We have 4 or 5 million to choose from, we're not picky.
Yeah.
But I have to explain to people that we're spiritual. And I always get that, well, what do you mean by spiritual? That's when you can tell you're talking to a religious person and not a spiritual person really quick. But that was an
Exactly.
excellent answer. Now I'm going to ask you something. Do you know music at your age is the whole world? I know that. Okay. Do you have any favorite pagan music?
I feel like I don't listen to a lot of it, but I am going to start.
She jams like today. I had Lindsay Sterling coming on, and depending on who you are, I mean, her stuff is Pagan. She's a fairy. And whenever I have my SJ Tucker, of course, my Come to the Labyrinth song. And also pretty much every time I'm in the shower, I play this Italian metal band called Psychedelic Witchcraft. And it has like an old like 60s rock vibe, but it's sort of reminds me of like Janis Joplin, but it's all like witchy lyrics. It's like I love it so much. But she'll come in, she'll walk in the room and jam out to whatever I'm listening
I
to.
just happen to have an album here,
Oh, Cloud.
Oh, I just wondered if she'd listened to Cloud's rap.
She's heard bits and pieces of it. Yeah, she's heard bits and pieces, but now she's getting into heavy metal. So she went from like Ariana Grande to Slipknot. So
There are so many to choose from.
oh yeah, she has eclectic taste like I do for sure.
But that's good that she is hearing some of it. Because the music a lot of times explains some of our traditions and our rituals and explains a little bit about us sometimes. I like Cloud. I've been listening to his since I got the new CD, and I've been jamming to some of and me listening to rap is hysterical.
I know. It's fun though. It's fun.
It's good music, but it's just I never saw myself, listening to rap. You are outer court, am I correct? You're an outer
Yes.
court initiate. Okay. Let's see, you've got to be how old to start witch school?
I'm not, I have to clarify. I'm not sure if she has to be 13 to start or just 13 to be initiated. So technically, if she started now and did her year in the day, she would be 13 by the time initiation would roll around. But I believe that's what Lord John told me before, but I have to double check on that.
So you're ready to start this? I was just thinking about it. Yeah, it's a big step. I was probably maybe a year older than you when I started the path. And that's been over 50 years ago. So I
Mhm.
started the path very young. I dabbled a few years with tarot cards and just being fascinated and wondering why I could see dead people and hear dead people, you know. And then I'm finding out the rest of my family could too, but they never talked about it.
Right. Yeah,
Well,
she's had
anyway.
experiences since she was 2 was her earliest experience, and she had a ton of them. And actually this is her crystal ball behind us. That's not mine, that's hers. When she was 5, she manifested it at a raffle at a metaphysical store. There were a ton of people, adults, and I told her, I said, and people averaged, you know, the $10, which I think was like 5 tickets for $10. And I told her to write her name on the tickets. And I said, put your energy in there. And, you know, I don't want to write my name for you. You write your name. And, you know, so she did whatever, you know, a 5-year-old would do, you know, her scribble, and put them into the jar with all these other tickets. And then a stranger, you know, someone, a guest of the shop, um, picked out a name, you know, picked out a name from the jar, and it was her name. And so, and all the adults thought it was rigged. I mean, it was like this whole ridiculous thing. But it's like, no, she manifested that. She put her energy in that. And she, I mean, she was praying. She even, I remember she had crayons and just a blank piece of paper, and she drew a picture of the crystal ball and like rainbow. I mean, she manifested it, and she was, you know, so she's always had it. So I think she's, you know, whenever she's ready, you know,
Mhm.
I think she's already there.
I think she is too, because her answers back are like spot on. I mean, if I was asking these questions to an adult, I couldn't expect any better answers than she gave me. So I was
Oh,
very,
I would, yeah, and Fiona's the same way. You know, she's 4, but tonight we were talking to her, and I wish I was recording, because the most profound things were coming out of her mouth at 4 years old. And she was saying things like, true love is in your whole body and your whole self. And I mean, oh my gosh. Yeah, I mean, it was deep. And then she was talking about being your true self. And I'm like, who are you? Like, I mean, it was pretty incredible, some of the things that she was saying. But, and of course, whenever I started recording, you know, then we had to be immature kids and ruin my mom's video. So,
of of course, that's because it
right.
was planned. I'm very excited for you, Miss Haley, here. You've got a lot of good stuff coming up. And October is coming up too, really quick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's going to be a fun time. But yeah, I mean, see from Lord Don how quick we can get her in. Get her while we can.
I know. But yeah, I mean, she's been, like I said, very sensitive since she was very little. She feels like it's not, you know, and she had a spirit guide that she very detailed, gave it took us a while to figure out it was her spirit guide, because she would also see spirits and, you know, other things. But you know, it's just getting back to that meditating and grounding, and sort of honing back in that mediumship ability, psychic abilities, by practicing.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a lot.
because if you don't practice, you get
Yeah,
wrapped up in mundane, and you know, because we all have it. It's just a matter of tapping into it.
yeah, that's it. And see, I didn't realize when I was younger that it was so prevalent in my family.
Right.
Nobody talked about it. And then all of a sudden, you know, we're talking about, oh, you're just like so and so, and this one has this and this one. And you're sitting there going, where were you guys at when I was 10 years old, freaking out, not
I know.
understanding all of this stuff, and like thinking that I was, you know, mentally deranged because
Oh my God.
you hear things, you see things, you know things. Like I know
Mhm.
things, and it's like, how do I know them? I don't know, you
I
know.
know. Well, and just talking to Fiona, like I said, there's so many times where she will say something, and I'm just like, how could you possibly know that? And, you know, Hayley was the same way when she was very little. And it's just like, you're talking to an adult, but like an old soul, like, you know, you're talking to an old soul. It's just so I mean, to be in that presence and it coming out of like a 4-year-old, or like when you know she was 4 or 3 or 2. I mean, it just kind of makes you sit back and you're like, wow. And you know, when we grow up and we become adults and we work and we get jobs and we all the chaos that goes with it, it's incredible how it shifts if you don't practice and you don't meditate and you don't ground. You know, you, like I said, but you can always get it back. I mean, it's just a matter of
It's raining and everything and just trying to get a handle on it. I can say, Miss
exactly.
Hayley, you're very poised. You've done a great job on this show. And you did a good job. You did a really good job. So take that.
Yeah, I'm sure she'll be on in the future.
Um,
And yeah, and
well,
she really did.
we have a couple on the roads coming up soon, so we've been dragging Miss Hayley with us on the roads. Poor child gets drug everywhere.
She was in the on the Casadega trip with us. So yeah,
It was fun, but yeah, when we do October, that'll be good too.
yeah.
Yeah, we've got lots of shows planned. Look at her. Oh yeah, I'll be on again. I appreciate you coming on. I really do. And it's kind of neat to see a young person who's actually walking the path, because it kind of seems like we don't find it till we're older a lot of times.
A lot of times, yeah. And I think a lot of times, you know, people I won't say a lot of times, but in some instances, you know, people come to Wicca because they're, you know, angry about Christianity, or they've had a bad experience, or they're, you know, it's usually the other way. And for me personally, I mean, I've been this way ever since I was very young. I did do, you know, mega church on and off for 10 years, but I realized that I was trying to fit in a box I didn't have any business being in, because when I came back to this, um, you know, through the stars aligning and universal connection of meeting Miranda and Angela, I kind of had a light bulb moment. This is who I've always been. I mean, I've always been this way, and it never felt so right until I came back. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've been like this since I could remember. And then getting confirmation from my mother, like, oh, yes, you've always been like this. You used to do this and this. And I mean, so it just makes sense.
Seems like sometimes they could save us the 20 or 30 years of worrying
I know,
about it.
I know, I know. All the questions.
My family, I like, every time I talk to my family and my relatives, I hear another story, and I'm sitting here going, I've been in this family for over 60 years, and not one of you idiots have said this before. And now you're telling me this. And it's like, because back in the day, we didn't talk about it. If you can imagine actually studying and not being allowed to talk about it. In the 70s, we got to where we could talk about it a little bit, but not a whole lot. And it was still considered underground. So it was
Right.
like, you know, you didn't talk about it around your family, especially, oh my goodness, no, you wouldn't bring it up. And then when your relatives start saying stuff like, you know, oh, you got to burn, go see Uncle Bill, he'll take the fire out of it. You're like,
Right. Exactly.
try this again, you
Yeah.
know, or, oh, your aunt just called, she said such and such and such and such is going to happen, so we got to be prepared for it.
Right.
She has premonitions. No, she just knows things are going to happen. You
Right.
know, so it's all of this witchcraft, and it's like, oh no, we're not witches, we're good Christians.
Right.
That's why for a long time I never even talked to my family about it, because they were such churchgoers. I thought, oh, I don't need the, you know, and then I find out all this crap, and I'm like, really?
You me sooner. I know.
You
There's
know?
only there's only one there's only one family member I'm not really super out with, and you know, it's just because pick and choose your battles. But I mean, I even think he would probably be okay with, I don't know. But it's just one of those things that's like, you know, I am who I am. My family doesn't have any issue with it. And like I said, they know I've kind of been this hippy dippy, witchy, black sheep, crazy colored, you know, just oddball forever. So
Yeah, I
I'm not
kind of
going.
get that for my family. They just like, yeah, what's the old crazy girl doing now?
Right.
Which is about right. But yeah, I think now it's easier to talk about because the books and the shows are out. Like you've got Harry Potter, you've got Practical Magic, this stuff that you watch.
The
Yeah.
craft,
Yeah.
the
Oh, there for a
little
while.
the Wicca craze of the 90s, with the craft and all. And
I was gonna say they had a cartoon on TV. It was called WITCH. One had a water power, one had it was a Disney thing. And I was like, oh shit.
I
And
think I saw that. Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was,
I mean, it's pretty interesting. And then you have, and then it can be like one hand in the other. It's like, because also Hollywood can really damage, what the reality is.
yeah, I think even with the damage that Hollywood could do, the damage was done years ago by making us green and
Yes.
warts and all that stuff. I think Charmed, even the new Charmed that's on Netflix, it's a little on the dark side.
Mhm.
I was watching that the other day, and then Sabrina.
Seen that one, but I did finally watch the finale. I'm all caught up on Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, so now we can talk about it.
Oh, okay. But I'm saying if you look at those, I mean, they're way out there, but
Oh yeah.
at least the characters are somewhat likable. They're, kind of normal, sort of.
Well, and I told you my favorite is The Good Witch because that is the most
Catherine Bell.
realistic. Yeah, that's the most realistic to me, though. I mean, relationship, kids, homework, family life, and it depicts to me like what real magic is. It's manifesting, it's intentions, it's using crystals, it's using incenses. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's
And she does all of that for her friends and they don't all
exactly.
catch on to it. I watched them all, by the way. Sorry, I binged.
And I own all. Well, and I own all the movies too. But I haven't seen whatever the season 6 that they did last year. I missed it live, and so I'm waiting for it to either repeat so I can record it or it to be released on Netflix. So, but that's the
Right.
only one.
Whatever was on Netflix, I just finished it not too long ago. So, yeah, I like the way that she blended everything together, like, was able. Now, I do herbs, and I'll tell you that rolling off her tongue so quickly with the herbs, I don't think I can quite do
Oh, I
yet.
know. I know. Well,
Yeah.
I feel like a show topic, like pop culture show topic, being created now. So we might have to look into that later on.
Wait,
But
honestly, with some of the shows that are coming out now, they're not just, it's not just superheroes. It's
well, like Winx, I haven't seen it yet, but that's the one about the Fae, right?
yes, it is. You got to see that. That's really good.
Yeah, that's next on my list. I have to finish Outlander first, though.
I
And
gotta catch up.
and Outlander is very pagan. I mean, it has a lot of, if you look at I don't want to give spoilers, but if you look at the premise of it, it's very pagan when you look at
with
the
the
book.
rocks. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's what, it was pagan. So yeah, but
If you know anything about the history of Scotland during that time, my father's people are Scots. That was a very pivotal time in Scotland because of the Jacobites rising up and all of that was going on with the England and the Red Coats. So it's very interesting part of history, and it's really fascinating when you start listening to what all went on because you didn't get like history is written by the victors, obviously, but when you start hearing it from other parts, and that's what they've done with Outlander, they've actually taken the Scots history and the English history and brought them together to kind of give you a real look at what was going on and how things were at the time. And I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, and I love the history pieces too, and that makes sense because he was Scottish, she was English. So but yeah, I like the history, those type of shows and movies. I like the period pieces. It's really interesting. But yeah, we'll have to do a show on pop culture stuff.
Yeah, we'll have to get our list together of what we're going to watch. But I do find that even with the kids shows, there's a lot more shows now that are showing the power of Earth. Like that show, Witch, Whoopi Goldberg was Gaia on the show. I can remember
You,
parts of it.
you know what was really I finally saw Frozen 2. I think Witch is on my watch list, but I know I haven't seen it yet. So I'll have to look and see if
Well,
it's still available.
it was a cartoon and it was called W.I.T.C.H. And each letter stood for something. And there were 4 girls. One had power of air, one had power of water. You see where this is going?
Yeah.
And the 4
And
powers.
I'll have to look that up. And I finally saw Frozen 2, and the kids, of course, have seen it a million times, but oh my gosh, it's so pagan. It's so pagan. It talks about the air spirit, the water spirit, the earth spirit, the fire spirit. And I mean, I was so impressed by it. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so pagan. It's like, oh my goodness. But it was so neat. But yeah, I mean, there's a ton of stuff we could talk about.
There are, and I think it's kind of nice that they're coming out and they're not all green and humpbacked and everything, and they're talking about the elements, and
Right.
it's the good side of things. It's
Yeah.
not the evil, like the evil stepmother type character that you
Right.
try to break rank from. And I'm sure there are those.
Yeah, exactly. And even when we saw Wrinkle in Time, the remake that was brought out by Disney, what, like 4 or 5 years ago, something like that. I felt like when because we watched it in the movie theater, Hayley and I went, and I remember that we both, when we watched it, we felt like it was very pagan because the characters that Oprah played and Reese Witherspoon, and I don't remember all the characters, but it seemed like they were different goddesses. The way that they were just beautiful and just, I mean, it totally gave off that feel. And you're going in between time portals and, all this. And it was a really good movie. And I fell in love with the book in the 6th grade when we had to read it for a 6th grade, as class, like class book. But I was really impressed by that movie, and I thought it had a lot of pagan undertones. I thought it was really, really well made.
Cool. I'm gonna have to pick it up now.
Yeah,
that wasn't one of the reading books when I went to school.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's really neat. And then of course, might as well talk, Peter Rabbit. That was a really cute movie. There's all sorts of stuff. But we're about out of time, and next week we're going to talk about the gods, and I think Pam has a little bit more on symbolism and the differences and similarities with Easter and Ostara. I think we're going to be continuing that. And I'm going to have a couple crafts to talk about. So that will be fun. And as always, if you have any questions or if you want to bring up a tea or a show topic, you can always message us on our Facebook page, Tea Time with Mother and Crone. You can email us at teatimemc@gmail.com, and that's time like the herb, THYME. And also go to our YouTube channel, Tea Time with Mother and Crone, and like and subscribe so you can get those lovely notifications when we go live every Sunday.
And hopefully in a couple weeks, we will have some products. Everybody loves their little t-shirts. We're looking at those. We all got our shirts on, it's kind of a thing now.
And the mug.
Really loving it at Casadega when that young lady goes, oh, let me get on here. It's really nice to have a following. So we hope to be getting out again. We're going to be doing shows live whenever possible, whenever things allow us to do them. COVID is not over, but it's kind of calming itself down a little bit. So we are able to get out. There is going to be a large illustration down in Jacksonville in October. And that's going to be a lot of fun. I hope to be able, like I said, I don't know how much we're going to be able to show on television, but I definitely would like to try.
We'll figure something out for sure.
Yeah, it might all be just verbal. I know we're in good shape.
Might be an audio file.
So it's going to be a fun time, but
Go on trails and all sorts of fun stuff.
yeah, because I mean, there's a lot. If there is something that everybody wants to see, if they want us to see us do more shopping with, some of the other herb other herb places or other, places around, hopefully I can get you on this side of the state.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll have to do that anyways because, for the shaman training, I chose the water challenge. So I have to get nine jars of water from different energies or bodies of water, and water 9 different, I think you chose the stones.
I chose the stones, yes.
Yeah. And then I have to plant 9 small plants over the course of 3 months. But I don't have hail or snow or icicles to draw water from, so I have to get a little creative. But it did say that different oceans have different energies. So I'm gonna come visit you, and we're gonna go to the Gulf side. We're gonna go to the Gulf Beach and
Yeah, it's
and
5 minutes from my house.
oh man,
I
I know
walk it in 10, so we can walk to the beach.
Yeah.
So desire.
I know you're living that.
Yeah, I love living this close to the water now. And this is my move. I'm finally in Gulfport, which is actually in St. Pete, but it's a little section of St. Pete that's much closer to the water. This is the artsy fartsy section of town, as they call it. So we have a nice size house, so that's kind of nice. So you and Hayley can come down and spend the weekend. And Fiona, if you want, because I've got enough room to put y'all up.
I know, it's
So,
nice.
yeah, we'll have a nice time. But like I said, we'll be doing some more on the road. So if you guys got an idea or a thought or something you'd like us to go do and see, give us a holler because we'd love some ideas. If there's something special you want to see, give us a holler. Now, next week, we're going to finish up with our Ostara and talk about all that stuff. And then we do have another holiday coming up.
We do.
Still going to have fun. So, Miss Hayley, thank you again for coming on and for being so honest with us and talking to us. That was very sweet. It's difficult sometimes to get people your age to actually come on and aren't afraid. So that was kind of cool, and I appreciate that. And it looks like Mom's doing a pretty good job. You're still alive.
She's not only outer court now, she is a dedicant. She does have her white robe. So
she does have her whites. Ooh.
She does. She did that with Lady Angela. Poor thing, she was so sick the night it happened, but she got through it, buddy, and she has her certificate and everything. So yeah,
that's what counts. And Angela does such an excellent job with those things. Oh my gosh.
She's amazing. She's amazing. But yeah, I have a picture of her sweeping the circle when she was 8 at Jack's Pagan Pride. She swept the circle for the whole congregation, a bunch of people sitting in circle at 8 in her green outer court robe. And then now she has her white robe. So she's doing good. I'm really proud of her. And I see Fiona following in the footsteps. She is very proudly walks around. I'm a witch, and my mom's a witch, and my sister's a witch. So she does.
We're gonna have to hand those robes down then, and we're gonna have to start looking and fitting her for her black robe.
I know, and I have a sewing machine now, thanks to Lori and Chad. So I'm really excited. I need to hone my sewing skills and
we'll have to put together a nice little black robe for her and a purple stole because it's gonna be won't be long. Oh my goodness. You're as tall as I am, so I mean
she's gonna be, and she's not done. My husband is 6'4". I'm 5'5". She's already my height, and she's 12. She's going to be tall. She's going to be tall.
Yeah, but that's when we got to start looking for that black robe. Ooh, that's gonna be so much fun when you get that black robe.
Yeah.
That's what everybody waits.
I know that's, trust me, when I finally got that black robe, I was like, oh my gosh, it's real, it's real. Even when Angela sent a picture of just like, what she had, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I got teary-eyed, and I was like, that's mine. That's a picture of my black robe. Oh my God. It's just because you work so hard for it, and and then you have all the years but you look up to people in the tradition too, and they're all wearing their black robes, and it's like, one day I'm gonna have that. It's a
That's
nice feeling. It's a really nice feeling.
It is. It's very nice and it's very wonderful. And Angela does such a good job with all that stuff. I loved the initiations that she did.
Yeah,
And
it was really beautiful.
yeah,
I
she
was
does
really,
a great job at that. I'm really looking forward to this illustration. So much, and
yeah,
so I've already booked the room.
yes, I know.
I booked the cabin. So, and this is only what, February.
Yeah, Pam and I are going to be bunkmates, so watch out.
Oh, gosh, yeah. We'll have all the kids. Yes, it's going to be a fun time. We do have the information if anybody's interested. You can hit us up. We'll give you the link to get on to find out what's going on, where it's going on. The tradition is having lots of illustrations in the fall, so if
Yes.
you can't go to ours, they're
Right.
gonna have them all over. And aren't they zooming a lot?
Yes. I believe, and then the big global illustration is going to be Beltane weekend. So that's going to be live streamed, I believe, and then you have all the regional ones in October. So that's going to be a lot of fun to see who's going to do regional illustrations also. So it's a fun time. It's exciting.
It really is. If you do get the chance to attend physically in person and you can do it, I always recommend that because there's just something magical about being outside in front of the campfire under the stars. I can't tell you what it is, but it's magic.
Exactly.
It is. And it brings you do the bonding there that you just don't get anywhere else. I mean, I've made friends, 20 years ago. I still have them from
Oh,
over
I
the
know.
different illustrations. So I look forward to them. And if you get a chance to go, I really recommend going to one. Just even the little regionals are fantastic because it's usually a group of people that or you've Zoomed with or whatever. Now you actually get to meet them in person, and that's kind of cool.
Well, and that's another thing. Speaking of Hayley being at, a lot of the adult rituals, she was at the global illustration last year that we did on Zoom. That was international. It really was international. And she was there. There were a few of us in person locally streaming the Zoom, and she was there in her white robe at illustration. So she, was even part of that. So yeah, so she has quite a lot of experience for her
Yes.
last years.
And that's pretty cool that she's able to experience all this because there's a lot of adults who have never experienced a ritual, believe it or not, with other people.
When she actually had part in the ritual. So I mean, I thought that was pretty cool. She did the incense. We had to make sure, she didn't burn her sleeves.
Now I can show you exactly how to do that, Hayley. Trust me. I can show you how to catch that robe on fire every time. I'm really good at it.
Yeah.
But no, that's really cool. I mean, teaching a child, and that's part of what we've all been saying. If we don't teach our children, somebody else will. And you've taken the initiative. And now she's gotten to go to all of this stuff and be involved with it. She can make her decision based on more fact than just.
Exactly. And she knows that she's welcome to whatever path she chooses, and she just naturally, she sees what I do, and she she's gravitates toward it, and we've all been really nature oriented anyways, and have connections to animal. I mean, our whole family is like that, so I mean it just makes sense.
It's really a great thing because this is a big thing we've always been talking about is we've got to start teaching our young people and bringing them up in this path, because otherwise
Right.
there isn't going to be anybody left in the path. But it's really great to see younger people coming in first timers and all, instead of waiting till you're 40 or 50 years old and finally dawning on you, this is where you should have been 40 years ago.
Right.
Probably weren't
Right.
ready for it, but you know, it's kind
Exactly.
of nice if you can get there a little bit earlier.
Yeah, I was lucky at least 28. I don't think that's super bad. 28 was when I joined, so I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, I
But
really started much, much younger, and it's because I had such a falling out with what I believed as compared to what was going on in my life at the time, and
right.
how I was
Mhm.
looking at things, and it just nothing made sense but this, and it was just
Right.
one of those.
That's exactly how I feel. Well, I should say 28 was when I joined the tradition, but yeah, I mean, like I said before, I've been like this my whole life since I was very little. So yeah, it just makes sense.
And it's really great that you're in a family that, you know, lets you be who you
Yeah,
are, because that's
exactly. Well, my mom and my aunt came to illustration, so that was the icing on the
they
cake.
came to your initiation. That was really cool. I was like,
Sorry,
whoa.
initiation. What did I say? Illustration?
Illustration,
Like
yeah, they came to initiation and they really enjoyed themselves. So that was really awesome. I mean, they were just getting right into that. They just thought it was the coolest thing. Um,
oh,
and that's the nice thing. Angela always has it, and she has it so that you can participate, you know, if you
mhm.
want to. It's always left open when you like to.
Yep, exactly. Exactly. Well,
Really.
we could go on and on and on because we just love this so much. And but
Yes, but
we
we
are
need to wrap
we
this one up. Our
yes,
IT guys don't shoot us.
I know, right? And also it's a school night, so I'm sure she's and our oldest, Erica turns 22 on the 25th. Um, is tomorrow, but by the time you see this, it'll be a few days. But yeah, so 22. So I have 22, 12, and 4, all girls. I don't know how I do it sometimes, but I wouldn't trade them for the world.
At least not
But
tonight. Maybe tomorrow.
yeah, exactly. No, so yeah, and I have off tomorrow, so I'm excited about that. I worked this weekend, so it just kind of worked out that it was my day off fell on her birthday. So we're gonna go thrifting tomorrow. So hopefully I can find some tea stuff, teapots. I'll keep a lookout tomorrow, but we're gonna do that because we're a family of thrifters. I even have a sticker on my car that says thrift life. So
Yeah.
it's like,
Well, you can
but
tell I got my new one at the local
yeah, so
thrift
pretty.
store, and it
So
was, you know, just a little set, but I started looking at them now and they're absolutely adorable. And I'm like, I gotta quit collecting knickknacks. But since I left my stuff at Angela's, I'm going back to get it. So that means I have to take another trip across state to get my mug and my teapot back. But she said she's
right.
taking very good care of it for me. So
I
what's
know
the
that
next
she
thing coming up? Ostara. I'll probably be across the state picking it up.
yeah, exactly.
I
Well,
feel
thank you.
terrible because I always end up staying at her house.
Oh, I know, but she likes it. She offers, so it's fine. But thank you so much again for joining us this week. We definitely appreciate all the support. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Tea Time. That's THYME with Mother and Crone. And we'll be happy to have your support. And like I said, any topics or suggestions, feel free to reach out.
Okay, we'll see you next time.
See you next time.